Good morning. Today I've got Rollie Vincent with Rolland Vincent and Associates. Rollie and I first met about 10, 12 years ago when you were at Textron, and I just had the opportunity to see you speak up at the NATA Leadership Conference. It was great, some great, great presentation you made regarding the health of the business aviation industry, or the biz jet industry, I should say. So let's start from there. Rollie, how are you today?
Good morning,
What's
Craig.
happening in
Great to be
Texas?
with you. It's very good to be with you. Thank you.
So as part of the conference last week up in DC, you put some pretty sobering numbers on the screen with regards to business jet manufacturing and the industry as a whole. What do you like it about it these days? Where do you see its strength?
Well, I think the clear strengths are the investment that the industry continues to be making. Big players across the spectrum really are betting on the future, and I think betting appropriately. Some of the big investments, really, a lot of the airframers get the attention at the big shows, but we're really watching the engine companies as well, aero engine companies. That's where a lot of the investment is going on, maybe a little bit more quietly, or if not behind the scenes, and certainly kind of behind the big curtain. It just seems that this is where a new combination of, let's say, an airframe and an aero engine really making some differences. We're seeing some exciting aircraft coming along with these new engines. So I think from an investment point of view, it's fascinating. We're, as an industry, investing for our future, and I think that brings bright days ahead. I think in the next few years, though, we are going to go through some turbulence, and I think part of the role that we see that we play is to just make people aware of some of the numbers that we're looking at, and trying to put it all together, and what does this mean, and the so what from all the data.
So let's start with the aero engine side of the house. Obviously, Gulfstream with the G700, they went back to Rolls-Royce for that platform. Did that surprise you a little bit, or is that something you expected?
Well, for many years, and Craig, you know this as well as I do, the Rolls and the Gulfstream combination was kind of almost expected. That has been a relationship that goes back to the 1950s maybe. I think we were all a little surprised when they went away from Rolls back in 2014, when that airplane rolled, the G500, 600 announcement was made. So going back to Rolls, no, we weren't surprised whatsoever. Actually, we were predicting that, and have been for some time. The G700, we even got the name right on that one. We thought that Gulfstream would be doing it, and we're not at all surprised to see that they're really seizing back the high ground at the top of the market. Customers expect them to be there, and they are going to be there. So now we have two really impressive aircraft right at the top of the market, so people have choices. That's always good from a customer perspective. So, but the bar has been raised now into the mid $70 million price point, and we'll see when Aerion finally comes along with their Supersonics, that price point jumps into triple digits. So we'll, we see that coming as well, probably towards the end of the 2020s. So yeah, we're pretty optimistic about the future.
Do you think the Aerion product is real? I mean, it's a challenge building a supersonic business jet that meets noise regulations, that meets look. There's a lot of challenges. It's not just about rolling out a supersonic airplane. There's a lot of issues that those guys got to overcome. Do you think it's realistic, and is it a big seller at the $125 million price point that everybody thinks it's got to come out at?
Well, I think it's realistic. It's absolutely coming. Question always is when and what's it going to look like. Someone has to pioneer this thing. When Lindbergh decided he was going to try to jump across the pond all those years ago, who would have ever thought that somebody could fly 30 hours in a little airplane and make it? And this is what our industry is all about. We push frontiers, and speed is definitely the next one. Now, at the same time, of course, the environmental movement is just accelerating in terms of grabbing attention and making people think about our impacts on the environment and certain emissions, certainly at high altitude. So all of those things going on all at the same time, it makes for some challenging questions. Regulators are also all over this as well, and we're going to need to see changes to regs on both sides of the Atlantic for sure before this is viable.
So you're a data guy, and you work alongside JetNet IQ, and you've been doing, you've been ingrained in the market research and the data side of the industry for a long time. Where are you really bullish? I mean, you've got Rolls-Royce with some new engine products. You've got Pratt and Whitney, some great engine products. Like you said, the aero engine guys are pretty innovative. Where are you really bullish on the industry right now?
Well, I would also highlight GE. I mean, GE's come into the turboprop market. Of course, they've also got Passport at the top of the business jet market. So they're investing heavily as well. GE's, I guess, the most prolific of the engine companies, and they've doubled down really on general aviation and business aviation. So that's impressive. The Catalyst engine is, of course, now a lot of people are saying that's encouraging Pratt and Whitney to work on their venerable PT6 engine, which we've just seen the first iteration land onto the new Pilatus PC12 NGX. So lots of things going on there. Where are we optimistic? Well, we see demand certainly for this new class of aircraft, the newer aircraft that are coming onto market that have just arrived. I mean, there's a lot of demand for them. The book-to-bill from the OEMs in the first the first 7-8 months of the year as we collect the data. Book-to-bill, that means orders divided by deliveries. So you want to see a book-to-bill above 1. They have been there. They've been above 1 for all of the year as a group. And that's encouraging. So customers are attracted to these new aircraft. The challenge, frankly, is in the legacy arena. We've got, I think, 35 models of business jets currently in production. Only a handful, maybe 6, are doing sort of what we'd call profitable volumes. The rest are really lingering a little bit. And some of them are likely to come out of production as we move forward. That has impacts on residual values. So we've been advising clients on that topic. That's where people really got burned back in 08, 09 was on the residuals and after that point. And we see that as another sort of wake-up call coming.
So let's talk about, so you got the ultra, the very long range jets, the G700, G650, and the Global 7500. They've got the top end of the market pretty well cornered. Back when I was at Bombardier, the Learjet Continental, now the Challenger 300, 350 was a game changer in the super mid market, but that market's gotten very crowded. Where do people go? I mean, what's the, is there a new game changer in that market that somebody's going to invent, or is it just, is it going to be a little bit better than is it now a game of we're going to be a little bit better than the last airplane and just go from there?
Those are great questions. Where we're seeing interest right now, it's fascinating. Not many people are noticing this yet, but in the middle of the market, there's quite an active demand that's been burbling and bubbling, I guess, for the last little while. We've been watching this, the so-called stand-up cabin airplanes, starting with a Latitude, all the way up to probably Challenger 350, that kind of class. We're seeing quite a bit of interest in that segment. And these airplanes, as you mentioned early on, we learned of the Continental, and that evolved into the Challenger 300 and now 350. That airplane continues to be in strong demand. We're seeing that in our surveys. We have a JetNet IQ survey that's in the field constantly and has been for the last almost 9 years. We monitor interest in models, various aircraft that are in demand, what's the probability of that. And we see a lot of interest still in that super mid class, and in particular the Challenger 350. Another aircraft that's got people's attention, and it's very quietly on the radar for some, is the Pilatus PC-24. A lot of interest in this aircraft, which is, what is it? It's doing something unique, and I think that's part of the future, these aircraft that can do something uniquely different. And in this case, of course, the large cargo door, for around $10-11 million, you can get quite a bit of capability and get into a very short field, maybe even without a runway. paved runway. So there's some elements, call it bragging rights for some, but for others, it's an absolute operational advantage to be able to have that type of aircraft. So we see the future as being larger cabin in various classes, down even into light jets. I wouldn't be too surprised to see some development there where someone's going to make a large cabin light jet, if I can use that expression. I think that's on the horizon. People want more comfort. We're getting a little bit bigger, each of us, as we look at the various profiles of customers. We're getting bigger. Let's face it, taller, wider, heavier, and that has to translate into design solutions, and that's what we're seeing.
So you think Cessna is innovating? Textron's innovating the CJ4 small cabin, and Embraer on the Phenom 300. Going to take that to the next. Hey, we'll keep it a 1,200-mile jet, but it's going to be a very very comfortable stand-up cabin, 4 people very comfortably versus knocking knees, and the stuff that we were used to back in our day.
Yeah, I remember seeing some very tall executives trying to get themselves into a Learjet 30 series some years ago. You still laugh about that. Yeah, I mean, this is where things are going, and the challenge is always, can the motors and can the aerodynamics work and make it so that it's not a fuel burning hog. Of course, that we need airplanes that are efficient. So, yeah, I mean, that's I think where it's going. A little bit more comfort in the cabin has been, I think we've checked that box as an industry, but really bringing that cabin thinking down into smaller aircraft, I think that's part of the future. Pretty excited to see some of the Autoland technologies that are just announced. This has been something that has been in work for years. The notion that, if you have an incapacitated pilot or some emergency situation, the ability for the aircraft to get itself down onto an airport safely, and even turn off the motors and open the door. I think that's all very cool, and I'm glad to see it finally coming along. We see a couple of OEMs already approving that for their aircraft.
You've got Bombardier, Dassault, Gulfstream, Textron, Embraer. Pilatus is a 40 aircraft a year manufacturer, 50 aircraft a year manufacturer. All these guys are chasing, what's a very limited market. Is the market big enough for them all to invest and play? Do you see some consolidation? How do you think shaping up in the future for these guys?
Well, I think consolidation is coming for sure. When we see this industry step back a little bit, we're a cyclical industry like most. We have up days and down days, up periods, whatever, down periods. Yeah, I mean, clearly when we go down, and I think that's where the demand is headed here as we look forward into the next couple of years. And we have what's called a synchronized recession risk, which is really, when you look across the big markets for business aviation, most of the economic forecasters are saying, things are getting softer, and I don't think there's any exception to that. All of the key economies are looking, as you look forward, are expected to grow a little bit more slowly, or even in some cases a lot more slowly over the next couple of years. So, yeah, a synchronized slowdown, and that impacts all kinds of things. And I think the pressures mount at those cases for consolidation. There are some OEMs that are more at risk than others. It's always fun to speculate as to what might happen. Maybe not so fun if you work in one of these companies, but what we see from a consolidation point of view, it'll probably start with fewer production lines, fewer models in production. We see quite a few aircraft right now being produced at, let's say, 1 airplane or 1.5 airplanes a month. I mean, that rate is just not profitable for sure. Regardless of whether the R&D has been written off years ago, that just isn't a good use of productive assets. So that's where the first impacts are going to be felt. So fewer production lines, models. And there are some OEMs that are clearly, whether through their financial performance or through just their limited reach in the marketplace. I mean, they do look more exposed than others. So, yeah, I think we're going to see that. We're also going to see consolidation in the charter and, I would say charter and Part 135 world aircraft management. A lot of folks are looking at, shared services going forward, whether it's to manage their airplane or to have somebody else fly it for them. I can see a lot of potential for consolidation. We're a very, very fragmented industry. Most of the operations here in the U.S. are where we do see still private operations. I think there's more pressure there for companies to quote unquote outsource to look at, aircraft management and charter, even here in the U.S.
So here's a question. I'll just ask point blank. The great trademark in business aviation is Learjet. Are we going to see the name Learjet in 5 years, or is it a goner?
Craig, it's a great brand, and I worked there at one point in my career, and when you ask the owner-operator community what that word Learjet means, what that brand means, they say one thing, and they say it very clearly ahead of probably any other thing, is speed. It means speed. Mm-hmm. That airplane and that brand really brought speed to business aviation years ago in the 60s. And it's been through many different owners over the years. And I think Bombardier has been very, good about investing over the years in that brand, in those facilities, especially in Wichita. But maybe it's a brand from the past now. It's a shame. It seems that it's come and gone. And the course of any product development or any brand goes through its product life cycle. So I wonder if we aren't on the downturn of that. I mean, they're at low rates of production. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is, what do you do with it? They've invested in this and that, and it hasn't really worked. It's a small part of their big operation. I don't think it's core to what they do.
Yeah, no, it's interesting now. They've got a sales team out there, and I think they're bringing the 75 to market. They're out from what people tell me, they're out selling the 75 at like a $9.5 million price point. And hey, look, for $9.5 million, it's a great airplane. Maybe you can just sell it all day long, and we'll do incremental upgrades on it, and we'll keep the brand alive until we figure out what to do from here. At least that's what I see from my perspective. I don't know if I'm right or not, but that's kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think a FAR 25 airplane for under 10 million. I mean, that's impressive. You don't see that very, very often. So, they repositioned the aircraft. We'll just see. I was expecting some fleet orders at NBAA this year for that aircraft. We didn't see that. I know that charter community in particular and some of the fractional players are looking at that aircraft. We'll see. I mean, Bombardier can definitely do fleet orders all day long. So they're very capable at that. So we'll see.
You mentioned the Part 135 charter arena. Mm-hmm. Obviously, NetJets, FlexJet, Flight Options are the big players in the fractional side of the house. You've got some Jet Aviation, Clay Lacy, Executive Jet Management, Solaris, some really good players on the charter management side of the house. The one word I hear, the one phrase I hear is the democratization of business aviation. Look, I can cut a pizza up 1,000 different ways, but if I eat the whole thing, it still comes out. The calorie number doesn't change. Are we kidding ourselves? Where do how do you see the charter market and the fractional market? And I know it's a new buyer out there. How do you see this playing out in the future?
Well, it's all around costs. We're talking about costs here. We have to lower, the industry has to lower its cost of production, cost of producing a seat or a flight. And how do you do that? Asset utilization, you have to get the asset utilization up. A commercial airliner, I used to work on the commercial side of this industry years ago. I mean, a commercial airliner flies 3,000 to 6,000 hours a year. Business aircraft, more like 200 to 350. I mean, right away, that's 10 to 20 times, or whatever the number is, 10 to 30 times more utilization out of the assets. So right away, there's a topic. Now, a charter carrier or a fractional operator, program holder, will be flying a business aircraft, let's say 1,000 hours a year, or 1,200, or something like that. But we're still at a third to, I don't know, a fifth of utilization of a long-haul business, of a long-haul commercial airliner. Okay, I get that. The missions are shorter. Even the ultra-long-haul business jets on average are only flying around 1,200 nautical miles, maybe 1,400 now on a typical mission. That's New York, Florida. It always has been, so that hasn't changed. So to get utilization up, really, asset utilization, but frankly, these aircraft are not inexpensive to operate. They're not necessarily designed for that type of level of utilization. Our cost per hour programs certainly are not. So lots of things need to change. I think one of the topics we discussed earlier was this, the talent topic, and a lot of demand for people who are either pilots or aircraft maintenance technicians, dispatchers, you name it. As talent gets more expensive, and it is getting more expensive every day in our industry as commercial airliners in particular, airlines grab talent, I don't see the unit costs really of our industry going down very much. In fact, I see them going up. So democratization, well, I'm not sure what that means, but if it means more and more and more folks flying, okay, during some, business, I should say, business development models could allow more people to fly, shared service, etc. But you've got to have the means to fly in our industry, and that, I think of it as $5,000 an hour. If you're not worth something like that, really, how often do you belong in the back of the airplane?
It's $100 bill a minute going into the jet engine. I mean, that's what it, that's the realistic thing, and everybody can talk about. Hey, look, there's a value there. I mean, I wrote a blog on GE and their jets, and I'm like, if you're $100 billion company, or $1 billion company or whatever, the cost of the jet is chump change compared to the value you get out of it. Now, you and I may think about, $6,000 an hour as a, huge expense, but, to a company that's flying a couple executives around, yes, it's more expensive than an airliner, but, the value is there. So I think it's all relative. I've just seen all these models come out, and they're like, we're going to really bring down the cost of private flying to the everyday person. And maybe I'm just a skeptic. Maybe I'm just a skeptic in my middle age, but I don't think we're quite there yet. Hey, yeah. So where do you see? Let's just talk about the international environment. Does China come back?
Well, we've been watching China for a while. Hong Kong never really slowed down until very recently. When you look at China, you really have to look at mainland China and maybe Hong Kong, Macau separately. We've been doing that for some time. So mainland China actually slowed down in terms of intake of aircraft, business jets, several years ago. And of course, during the more recent trade battles with the U.S., the interest and demand for in particular business aircraft and U.S.-built business aircraft has really, really slowed down. That's a shame, but it is the reality. Hong Kong, a little bit less slowdown there. In fact, only recently, with all of the troubles on the ground in Hong Kong, do we see a slowdown in intake of business aircraft there. So kind of a tale of two markets. Does China come back? Absolutely. There's a lot of development there, and frankly, aviation is a huge part of China's economy and will be going forward. The development of infrastructure is still slow. The opening of aerospace is still slow. Airspace still slow. Pilot creation, it's a topic for every day and for the future, but China needs so many pilots and technicians, and it's absolutely a huge part of the future. So we'll see. We're in a very strange time with U.S.-China relations, and that will get resolved, but it doesn't seem like it's happening quickly.
How about Europe? I mean, huge environmental concerns in Europe right now, or big green push, I want to say, in Europe. Big spotlight on, aircraft shaming right now, I'll call it. Is that the biggest challenge business aviation has in Europe right now, or is there other issues that we need to worry about more?
Well, I think Europe economically is in a tough spot right now. It's been growing. I mean, the European economy went through what we'll call a double dip recession after the 2008 crisis. So there was the recession that occurred right away. Then there was recovery, and then down into recession again, back up, and then now they've been on pretty slow growth. Most of the key economies are growing at around 1% right now. And in fact, Italy technically in recession, Germany right on the edge of it, Brexit, and of course all of the chaos that's introduced, almost a permanent chaos now for the last three years. It's just damaging to the European economy, both sides of the English Channel. There's no question around that. So all of this has caused people to really be more inward looking, whether it's, I just want to look after my own little backyard or my own country, or we've gone from globalization to nationalism almost overnight here, it seems. And it's a trend. It'll swing again back, but right now we're in this sort of, take care of my own backyard kind of mode. And it's not just here in the U.S. It's really a bit of a, for sure, transatlantic phenomenon, and we'll see where that all goes. In terms of Flygskam, or that's the term now thrown around in Europe, coming out of Sweden, of course, the flight shaming is a big topic. The environmental challenge that our industry, and frankly all of our industries face, all of our communities face, it's not going away. We are, remember reading one little note that talked about there is no planet B, forget about plan B, but planet B. We are definitely facing some very unusual climate changes, and it's a global issue. So to the extent that business aviation is a very small contributor, but unfortunately somewhat visible contributor, we are in some people's spotlight. So taking care of that issue, I think sustainable jet fuels or aviation fuels, that's part of it. Technology, that's certainly part of it. Getting cleaner motors, and in the future, hybrid and I'm sure electric. But that's all well out there in the future. In the short term, I think sustainable fuels and technological changes are going to help. Airspace usage, where we have more direct flying, especially in and around airports. I think that's going to help as well. These are all contributors. Maybe they don't change the overall direction of polluting in the air, if you like, but it's as an industry, we need to be able to show that we're doing the right thing, and I think we're getting there.
There you go. No, I agree with you. There's a lot of investment. I mean, hey, look, for every crisis, there's an opportunity, right? And you just talked about, you talked about better, development of better motors, development of alternative fuels, development of eVTOL or some sort of hybrid, so, wherever there's a challenge, there's an opportunity to make some money and create some.
Well, I agree. I think we look at, and the typical behavior when things are looking tough, let's say we're looking on the radar screen, there's a lot of bright colors on the radar right now. We're saying, what do we do about this? A lot of people and a lot of companies, a lot of investors, frankly, I think they're doing the wrong things. What they're looking at is, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to freeze. I'm going to hold. I'm going to, consolidate, whatever. There's others who are looking at that screen and say, wait a minute. This is a this is an opportunity as others don't do something for us, for me, for our organization, to double down or to make a bet on the future. And you know what? Those are usually smart bets. That's when things change. That's when companies really show and individuals really show if they're leaders or not. And I think that's a fascinating opportunity. And rather than, sell the stock and, burn the furniture or whatever, it's really the opposite. It's time to say, you know what, there's some good here. And the good is that no one else isn't doing anything. I'm going to invest. I'm going to seize the high ground and be ready for the next day. And I think that's where some of our listeners hopefully are going.
Yeah, no, hey, look, I agree with you. And I, look, when I joined Gulfstream in the mid 90s, Bombardier made Gulfstream a better company. It challenged it to build, what was a good product and make it great. G5 came along, it was a great product. The Global Express became a great product. Then, Bombardier, created some other great products, and then Gulfstream created some other great products, as did the other guys too. So I think it's like you said, competition and challenges make everything a little bit better. Hey, let's finish up here. One last question: are you short term? You bullish? You bullish on aircraft deliveries going up? You think we going up? We flat? We going down? What's your crystal ball?
Well, crystal ball on this year and next year is we're going up. We think we're going up fairly, I'd say, mid to high single digits in terms of the volume of aircraft that are going to be delivered, certainly on the jet side. So as Gamma reports their numbers in February for the whole year of 2019, they're going to be up for sure. And we think also the year after. Where you're going to see that up is in new and substantially new aircraft that are in demand. So-called legacy models, airplanes that have been delivering now for quite a few years, maybe at the toward the latter part of their product life cycle, production life cycle. That's where the challenges are. But when we see the ramp ups of the Gulfstream G500, 600, certainly the Global 7500, the PC-24 from Pilatus, Latitude, and of course Longitude staying up there. We've got a Cirrus aircraft delivering at a good rate as well. So we've got some Phenom 300 continues to be an impressive aircraft, lots of volume, and legacy now into Praetor. I think we're going to see ramp up as Embraer. They've really got some challenges there to get that whole industrial footprint figured out with the new Boeing arrangements. But once that's all in place, the Praetors are impressive, and I think people are taking notice. So lots of good demand and good volumes coming out of that, which will make Gamma numbers look good for this year and next. After that, we are predicting the deliveries in the industry are coming down for 21 through 24. We think is going to be a bit of a swoon. And that's based on what appears to be, for I'd say 9 out of 10 indicators are telling us the demand is slowing down, and that'll finally impact the factory outputs. So we'll see a softer period of, we think, 21 to maybe 24, and then picking up again. Aero engine development is going to help that. A lot of people focus on the airframes. We're watching the aero engines as well very carefully. So. We're optimistic, but I'd say 2 years of good news out of Gamma numbers, and then some soft times ahead.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it. Hey, Rollie, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, I guess we're in Texas most of the time. 972-439-2069 is the way to reach me. And R. Vincent at RollandVincent.com. That's with 2 L's, ROLLAND, Vincent.com. So that's the way to reach me.
Awesome. Hey, Rollie, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate your insights. Let's do this again.
Craig, we appreciate what you do.
Let's do this again in a couple months. We'll see how your predictions come. How's that sound?
Appreciate what you do, Craig. Thanks.
Thanks, Rollie. Talk soon.